Hello HEMA friends and welcome to this new video. Today I'm here with my friend Mauro and today we are going to give a look to a number of ways to defend the hands. So let's start from the hand snipes which are slightly easier to deal with, the one with mezzani for instance. So if we have the hands exposed and my opponent aim for my hands with the mezzano, I can either cut over the mezzano, so beat it down and thrust at the opponent, or I can even block it so that I just block it by lowering my hands and then I thrust into the bind at the opponent. Two simple ways to deal with probably the easiest to deal with attack, which is a mezzano or horizontal strike toward your hands. Now, if instead the mezzano, so the horizontal strikes, arrives from your outside line, it is better to cut over it only. So it is better to go down and break the thrust, as Fiore would say, break the mezzano in this case, and then answer back to the opponent with a fendente or whatever. So let's now deal with the most complex for many people attack to defend from, which is the false edge strike toward the hands from below, so the sottano, with the false edge toward the hands. So in these cases, when the opponent strikes toward you, you can either just go downward toward porta di ferro, so you reach the position which Fiore calls porta di ferro, with the sword in this kind of position, and you parry the attack of the opponent because you have this angle which protects your hands. Another option is to reach porta di ferro mezzana, which is slightly more complex in this case. It's just lowering down the weapon. In this case, you have the hands exposed. You just lower down using your pommel. And in this case, again, you can defend from the opponent. Now, in both these cases, you can do it by remaining still, standing still, or stepping backward. Depending from what you do, you can answer back with a fendente toward the opponent's wrists while retreating. During your retreat or after parrying, you can just snap the opponent's hands and then retreat. Now, you can also defend with measure. And if you defend with measure, you want to void with your hands. Now, something that people do sometimes is to retreat backward, let's say, moving from longa to breve, to defend in this kind of way, to void in this kind of way. The problem of doing this in most of the cases is that people tend either to retreat backward after landing the action, or they keep going with another action. Sometimes they structure the action on top of this retreat because it is the most common one. And honestly, it is the one which is the hardest to defend with. From this kind of position, you can hardly defend in this kind of way, and it is harder to go upward, so defending is harder. Funny enough, it is better to retreat toward other positions, which are not the center one. So, for instance, we can retreat in this position and be ready to defend. It's very good, actually. Dinted Zenghiaro, or Wechsel, as the German calls it, probably is one of the best options in this case. You can also, which is slightly more risky but it works, void by moving toward this kind of position, but if the opponent thrusts at you, you risk almost as much as the previous one. Otherwise, if the opponent doesn't thrust after it but goes for a fendente, so like false edge, sottano, mandritto fendente, and you retreat in this kind of way, you can cross the opponent's attack. So this is a combination that sometimes happens, like 1, 2, and you can defend from it by retreating in basically one tag, more or less. Now, another problem that sometimes happens is if people, instead of landing the false edge strike toward your hand, that we have seen before, they thrust toward your hand. This is slightly different because it is another angle. You can't easily parry the thrust in the same way. Chances that you will receive it. And luckily, of course, it is not easy to spot it at first glance, but of course it is indeed possible. Now, if you have chance to understand if the opponent does this kind of thing, especially in sport environments in which you have more life, let's say, to figure it out, or sparring, of course, anyway, you can understand if the opponent goes for one hand snipe or the other, and you can deal with it in the proper way. If the opponent is thrusting at your hands, it is better to leave the position with your hands. So certain kind of movements are worst, such as going toward the porta di ferro, for instance, is not ideal because you tend to remain more or less on the same line, and chances that during the motion it may even be that the opponent stabs you in this kind of way, and even while retreating it is slightly worse. Then going instead toward the intercinghiale, which offers you the chance of voiding the thrust and of instantly parrying the action of the opponent. So these are a number of options. My favorite one in terms of retreating is dentro del cinghiale, honestly. You can also retreat in porta di ferro, but it is not easy to defend from it in this case when you are under pressure. It is easier to do this kind of thing, which is more intuitive other than this kind of thing. But let's try out also this option. So most quadrant toward you end up going are anyway better than remaining here. These or these tend to be better while retreating from an end snipe, while voiding an end snipe. Now there is a bonus action that you can land, which is trying to void with your hand. This is mainly useful if the opponent is trying to aiming for your right wrist, ideally, with a fendente, for instance. If this happens, you can just void with your wrist and then land a thrust with a one-handed thrust toward the opponent. This is an option. It is more risky. I landed it also against the false edge strike from below, but it depends from the angle of the false edge strike, so it's a little risky. But if you want to try it out, it may work. It is not the best option in terms of safety, It is a high risk, decent reward, I will say, kind of action, but theoretically speaking, it works. Very good, people. I hope you will find this video useful in some ways. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Mauro for helping me. And as always, see you next time. Also, remember to check my Patreon link in the description if you want to support me at the channel. See you next time.